Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the show this morning. Welcome to For the Health of It. This is Dr. Scott Phillips, and I'm the owner, operator of Lifestyle Chiropractic and Wellness Center in the Clock Tower building on Main Street. And it is a beautiful Thursday morning. There's finally some snow up in the mountains. Winter has come, albeit a few months later than we might have anticipated. But if you haven't been out there skiing and what we've got, or snowshoeing, or doing something fun out in the snow, now is a great time to do it. I was actually down at Bryan Head this weekend skiing, and it was really fun, except I couldn't see anything, but at least there was tons of snow, and we had a great time. So we're excited to have you this morning. We are ushering in National Nutrition Month, which I had to be told was Nutrition Month a few weeks ago. And so here it is, March, and we're excited to talk about nutrition, definitely something I'm very passionate about. And I know that the guest that I have today is also very passionate about it. We have Miss Betty Wade from the Heber Valley Medical Center, and head nutritionist, dietitian. I don't know, do you have a good title, Betty, that we can... Overlord of all things food?
At the hospital. Yeah, that would be it.
And so we're really excited to chat with Betty. We got a few things to go over firsthand. As far as events go, obviously every Thursday night still there at Balance is the guided meditation with Suraj. She is a wonderful practitioner, and they're over there at about 5:30. They lock the doors actually at 5:45, so you want to go over there if you're interested in that. And the other one I wanted to draw attention to, I had Lisa Wark on not too long ago, and she is helping run this kind of 30-day challenge. It's a free 30-day kind of health type of challenge that she's running through Facebook. It's completely free. You can just jump on and get their ideas and their challenges, and every day they have something else they're focusing on. And so the Pilates Studio Utah is the Facebook page that you can find, or you can probably go to their website also at thepilatesstudioutah.com, and Pilates spelled Pilates. So the Pilatesstudioutah.com, and they actually do weekly prizes and everything. So anyway, if you're interested in getting a little bit more motivation, maybe a community of people to kind of help you out in your own journey, then that might be a really good way to do it. We talked about Issues Conference last week. That happened last night. I hope that those of you had a great time. I heard it was really well attended and actually very, very informative too. So kudos to the people that put that together. And, of course, we appreciate anyone in the community that's helping us out that way. There are really no other events that I know of going on. I don't know, Betty, if you guys have anything going on. I'm going to ask you later anyway, because I think you would be great to teach some. I don't know if you've ever done cooking classes or anything. I know that Amy was talking about maybe doing something like that, and I think that would be really fun. But let's go into this article that I read. This is actually something that came across my desk about a week ago. I was ready to do it on the show last week, but we had a different article that I wanted to talk about. But it's somewhat nutrition related, so Betty, feel free to chime in here too with it. But this is a study, and I don't know if you've seen this. They did kind of this first study. They say it's a landmark kind of study about allergies, peanut allergies specifically. And they took this group of kids that they identified as being high risk for peanut allergies, and they started to offer peanuts early on in life. And showed a really anyway, I'll go over the study, but it looked like that offering those peanuts kind of at a small amount early on made it so the peanut allergy kind of was staved off. Now, I couldn't find anyone here how we find who we think might be, a high candidate for having these nut allergies. But what I did find interesting was that a little while ago, I still remember when people said, hey, keep peanuts away from babies because they could be allergic. We don't want to find out. But apparently they have retracted that statement. The American Academy of Pediatrics has said that doesn't really, it doesn't change much, doesn't help much. There wasn't really a drop in any peanut allergies. And so now they're saying almost the opposite, of saying, hey, let's actually maybe start giving them peanuts in a small dose, early on in life. Now, again, like I say, this is one of the first studies ever done about this type of treatment, so to speak. And so obviously even the researchers saying a lot more research has to be done, many more studies have to come out before we just start cramming peanuts down our babies' throats. And so anyway, I thought this was interesting. So we'll go in. So the clinical trial was 628 babies assessed as being prone to developing the peanut allergies. And they had, of course, the two groups, one that was given peanuts and one that was not given peanuts. And for every 100 children that avoided the peanuts, 14 of them developed the allergy by the age of 5. That's about how long they tracked them. In contrast, only 2 of the 100 that were given the peanuts became allergic. And so they're saying it, 2 as compared to 14 was statistically significant enough for them to say, hey, maybe it's something that we ought to do. But I don't know. I mean, that's definitely something that we know. Food allergies is on the rise. Kids are more allergic to more foods, it seems like. But peanut allergies have been around for a long, long time. I know I have an uncle that we couldn't have peanut butter around. You couldn't even open the jar, And so anyway, I think this is kind of an interesting study. They say, of course, this isn't something for you to test on your own children. So those of you with babies right now, put the peanuts down, walk away. This is definitely something physician-mediated, right? Talk to your doctor and say, hey, maybe, if you have other kids maybe they're allergic. I don't know. Do you know what would constitute someone being prone to the allergy?
Well, a lot of things that we look at, especially in babies, are the genetics.
Okay.
And I've been a dietitian for 30 years, so I can give you a little bit of background of what we used to tell people.
Sure.
And it used to be even, 30 years ago when I first started, we were telling pregnant women not even to eat
because that
peanuts
might make their kids prone.
Yeah, make them, and especially if you had a genetic history, then you would watch those things in your pregnancy. And so just a few years ago was when they did the American Academy of Pediatrics, and it's now called the American Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics,
right.
Did a research together to see what we really should be doing with babies. And that's one of the first times they also really looked at this. Well, yeah, it doesn't look like it's really doing anything. Right. It's not staving anything off. And there was also, I would say it was probably about a year ago that a similar type of preliminary study was done on wheat.
Yeah,
and they found the same type of thing. And we used to tell people, rice cereal first.
Right.
Wait to introduce wheat until they're a
right.
year of age. And we're finding we just had way too many rules.
Yeah, isn't that I'm one that loves less rules, so I think that's great that we're getting
it makes sense.
Yeah,
we're all very different,
yeah.
and so, yeah.
So very interesting. I think, you say, hey, these people are prone. Maybe we, with the help of a physician or an allergist or even probably a dietitian, you say, okay, well, maybe let's start introducing some of these foods earlier on. And it looks like some of this preliminary research is saying that might actually help stave off the allergy, which I think is kind of a fun study. I know a few people in my own life that recently their children have developed some sort of food allergy, and of course they're just at their wits' end trying to figure out something they can do to help, because it can be very life-altering.
And life-threatening.
Yeah, very life-threatening for sure. So anyway, nurseries around the church also now maybe have I know that's where you got the button that says I'm nut free, I mean, it can be very, very, you just never know. And I think it's good that research is going in this direction. I think more science about, hey, what really is making us allergic to food, I think is definitely a step in the right direction.
Oh, absolutely. And a fascinating thing, too, with infant feeding period is that, again, it used to be you introduce vegetables at this age, rice cereal at this age, fruit you have to wait till then.
Yeah.
Now the guidelines are really basically start feeding them solids when they reach for the food and they show interest in it. And we're also learning that infant-led feeding, in other words, we really don't want to even be doing a spoon and feeding them. We want them to be doing finger foods and handling it themselves, so they can develop their hunger and fullness cues better.
Well, and the fine motor control too that helps there, and
Absolutely.
then parents get less spaghetti on their faces.
That's right. That's right. And they quit trying to force them to eat rice cereal.
Or squash spit at them.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think all the different foods that I have stained on many of my shirts because of my wife who's listening is probably like, you have them. It's probably her that has the stains on the shirts. At any rate. So anyway, really cool study, guys. If you're interested, it was published on many, many sites. I found it on several different ones, and so you can look into that yourselves. But anyway, so let's get a little more formal introduction to Betty Wade here. Again, I think you're pretty well known in the Valley. I think a lot of people know that you do what you do there at the hospital. I think most people that go to the hospital get that are diagnosed with something that have their plan of care. A lot of them get to visit with you, which again, I think is a spectacular part of what IHC does, right? Because
absolutely.
We talk about Hippocrates, and one of his famous quotes is, let food be thy medicine, medicine thy food. And I think that's something that maybe hopefully is becoming a little more popular, a little more chic, so to speak, to say, hey, I'm not just going to go in and get the pharmaceuticals. I'm also going to look at, see what else I'm doing, what else I can do on the natural side of things, and food is a great way to go about it. So I guess by way of just introduction to you, kind of tell us, you say 30 years, which is, I hate to say almost, I'm going to keep saying almost as long as I'm alive, even though as long as that's going to completely change soon, but I'll just keep saying that, I think.
Scott, I could be your mother. Yes.
But I think there's many professions obviously change throughout time. I don't know if nutrition and dietetics, if there's another one that changes more than that. If you have to, I'm sure you have to keep up just very, rigorously on, something new comes out tomorrow and says, this is the new superfood that's going to cure everything. We were hacking around in the Amazon forest and we found this berry, and it's now curing everything. And then a week later, wait, no, that berry causes cancer, right? And so we see these changes so frequently. So tell me where you did your training. You say 30 years, how long you've been with the hospital itself, and kind of what got you into it, and kind of what makes you passionate about doing what you do.
Okay. Actually, I'd love to talk about that. I got my training at BYU, but I didn't actually start in nutrition. I didn't know you could have a job in nutrition. I was always fascinated with food and physical activity. I've always liked to walk. But then I was majoring in political science. My goal was to get my degree. I always wanted to go on a mission. I was going to go on a mission, come back, go to law school. And when I got back from my mission, I realized that was not the direction I needed to head. So I was just looking through the college catalog, because we actually did have catalogs.
Paper catalogs. I had those too, so don't worry. It hasn't been that long.
And medical dietetics stuck out like a neon light.
Yeah.
So, and I was excited about it. They did let me in, which was kind of interesting, because you can't get 2 bachelors at BYU,
right?
And I had to go in through the graduate program in nutrition, and bachelors of arts is not prerequisite. So they were very generous in letting me make up those classes and tentatively holding my graduate position there. And then I first worked at WIC, which is a great program because you're teaching moms and children about nutrition. And but my dream job was to work up here at the hospital, and the dietitian who was consulting quit, and that was 28 years ago that I got the job, and I've been with that ever since. Done a few things at Utah Valley campus up here, teaching nutrition and health, and some things with the WIC program out in Uinta Basin until probably about 10 years ago, 11 years ago, and then the hospital became busy enough that it was a full-time job.
It said, hey, you can't do any more of these side things.
Yes, yes.
We got too many people that need you. That's really kind of a fascinating I think, journey as far as 30 years ago, what we talked about nutrition. I kind of jokingly on my Facebook page, said, hey, we're going to talk about, these aspects of nutrition that maybe people are confused about. And then I said butter versus margarine, as kind of a funny thing. But really that debate's kind of over. But there are others that are very similar to that go on, and one day we may find the answer to them all. But
well, and that's the key right there, is the reason it looks like no one knows what they're talking about is nutrition is because people in nutrition, more than any other field, people promote their theories as fact.
Sure.
Before the research
long
is
before
done.
the research comes out.
And we're just really getting sophisticated enough with the research that we can identify what is actually going on in the body and what happens. And I think a classic is just the issue with eggs and cholesterol.
Sure.
When they first came out with that recommendation, it was right after they found out that cholesterol was part of the plaque that clogged the arteries.
Right. And they said, if there's cholesterol in there, then we better not be taking cholesterol
we better
into our
not
body.
eat it. And then
Which
we
makes
find
sense.
Out, well, yeah, it does if that were how the body works.
But then we find out.
And it's not, because we make our own cholesterol. And
Yeah.
except for some rare exceptions of people who have some genetic defects in that area,
Right.
we eat it, we don't make it.
Right.
We have to have cholesterol for hormones,
Right.
to even make hormones in our bodies. So,
Right.
yeah, it's kind of that process. We jump in with things, and one of the problems is with supplements, you don't have to prove they're safe before you promote them. So that's why we get, there's this berry that does this, and then once people start doing the research, it's like, oh, whoops.
Or maybe it doesn't. Yeah, at least sometimes it doesn't do anything, and then other times it can prove to be harmful. I think definitely supplements it's another whole show that we can have. I mean, obviously with no governing body, they come out. I tell people I could make fish oil in my bathtub and sell it.
Yes, you could.
which I'd rather not do. It would stink. Maybe I should talk about something else.
And your wife would hate to clean it.
She would
I
hate
promise.
to clean it. So I'm going to announce too. I keep forgetting to do this, but definitely those that are listening, if you have any nutrition questions, we're definitely going to open the phones up. So feel free to call in, or just any comments. Again, phone number here is 657-1340, 657-1340. Feel free to call in. We're just going to chat for a little while. Won't take any breaks and have any silence or anything like that. But if there's just something burning you want to ask Betty or I, please feel free to call, or any comment you wanted to make. I'm glad you brought up the cholesterol thing. That was something that was definitely on my list to talk to you about. I know that's been in the media, popular media, for a long time now, last few weeks, saying, hey, these are the new guidelines that are coming out. They're going to change that. I was part of that generation. In fact, I remember being younger and having my cholesterol checked, and I guess it being a little high. I couldn't tell you exactly. I was young enough that I don't remember. I was probably 8, 9, or 10.
Oh, wow.
And they were talking about putting me on a statin drug at that point. And then they said, no, let's back off the eggs. That was a big thing, is don't let them eat any more eggs. So we stocked the freezer with egg beaters, I remember. And I remember eating these things being like, I don't even like eggs anymore, because it was such a but I don't know in what capacity it happened, but things changed, and then I was fine, and they thought it was the eggs, and now we're finding out that it wasn't the eggs, and I'm eating eggs anyway. And so anyway, this is very interesting. And so that's one of kind of the landmark things I think that's going to come out in this new study. The other one I wanted to talk to you about is they're actually finally saying, hey, we need to put some sort of ceiling, some sort of cap, some sort of RDA on our sugar intake. And it's very interesting, because I teach a health class at UVU right now, and we were looking at labels, and they were actually the students were very surprised to see. I mean, we look and see, sugar, X amount of grams or whatever. But when you go over to where the percentages all are, that's like the only one that's missing a percentage, because they don't have an RDA. And so tell me if again, I'm kind of on the biased end that I think sugar, the over-sugaring of America, right? I think that we are very sugared people, right? And I think this is a step in the right direction. But tell me kind of your feelings and what you see as far as people coming into your practice.
Okay, that's a very good question, because again, we kind of have trends where people avoid certain foods, and,
Sure.
and we kind of have evil foods. And one of the confusing things with the labels is the sugar grams right now on the labels. The sugar grams that are listed are all sugars.
Right.
Including the natural ones, which
right, not just the
we
ones
don't
that are
want to
added.
avoid. So it's
right.
impossible. And I think that's one of the, well, I know that's one of the reasons why they don't put a percentage on
Yeah,
there is
yeah.
because
If
it will
you're-
give people the wrong idea.
If you're eating an apple that gives you 70% of your quote-unquote RDA is sugar because it's natural fructose,
fructose.
then maybe you'll be like, hey, maybe I shouldn't eat that apple. I better
Right.
grab
and I see that all the time with milk.
Yeah.
Because I'm a diabetes educator, I have people all the time who will come to me and say, well, I don't drink any milk because it has sugar. And it's like, yeah, but it's not added. And you have to explain that, yes, it's lactose. Really what I've found more effective on helping people limit their sugar intake rather than just really focusing on sugar is evil.
Yeah.
Because actually we don't know that, well, there are a few things we're concerned about, but we think probably the biggest problem is that we're eating so much sugar, we're not eating what we should be.
Yeah.
So what I focus on is more getting people to eat the way they should be eating. And my guideline for them is, at most 1 treat a day and just make it between 50 and 100 calories.
Yeah.
And have it with the meal and make sure you're getting your fruits and your vegetables and your whole grains and, your protein profile where we want it to be. And that seems to take care of the problem itself.
And
rather
then we're
than
not.
just don't.
Well, and this is the thing too is right. Anytime we put you can't eat this, right? I mean, we think about our kids, right? If you say, oh, you can't eat that or you can't do that, I mean, what's the thing that they want to do or eat the most after you say that? And I don't think our mindset changes much. And so I think you're right. Anytime we label and say, hey, that's bad, don't eat that, that almost makes it so that we eat it more, right? I tell people when they say,
yes.
I'm going off sugar, like the first thing that happens, their doorbell rings, their neighbors are bringing over cookies.
And they want them.
And then later on that night, all of a sudden it just becomes so available. And I think that's very, very important to realize is it's such a stress on the body to try to will yourself into not eating something that you've eaten for so long. That there needs to be this gradual, I think, back off, right? And I always tell people when I lived overseas in Europe and we, ever brought any American dessert to the table, right? Brownies was the, I mean, they wouldn't eat it. They couldn't eat it.
Too sweet.
Yeah, it was so sweet for them. And so I wonder too, and this is just a general question and not anything you have to back up with research or anything, but do you feel like our taste buds have changed? Do you feel like there's a point at which we are almost over the top with the sugar that we need to start backing down and that those things can change? Have you ever seen that?
Oh, yeah.
In
That
your
happens all
diabetes
the time.
education, I mean, that's one of the things is we crave that sweetness so much. But by backing off kind of little by little, we can change that, right?
Well, and the problem is that part of what we're doing is we're just taking out the sugar and we're forgetting you have to replace it with
Right.
something else. And if we're not eating enough and we're not eating a balance, then our body actually produces hormones that cause us to crave
The sugar, exactly.
But it's because it stores easily. It turns off our ability to tell we're full.
Yeah.
So, and absolutely, I see all the time that people's taste buds change. And I don't know about yours when you came back from Europe, but when I did, it was my brother's birthday, like a week after I came back, and I had a piece of cake. It made me sick because in Germany, they don't do frosting.
Yeah, no,
I mean,
yeah,
that's Nutella was what we used on our shortbread cookies to
Right.
try and get the Oreo effect. And that's as sweet as it got.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it was. And always disappointing over there because you'd see these beautiful desserts, and as American, you expect it to be sweet.
It's
and
just
like,
got to be, and it's not.
There's
exactly.
no sweetness.
It looks a
Wasn't
lot
even
better
fun.
than.
Yeah. No, you're right, and that can change, but part of that is eating healthy.
Right. I get a lot of people ask me like, how do I get over my sugar cravings, all that kind of stuff. And I think going cold turkey is not the way that I usually tell people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're right there. If we say, hey, I'm not going to have this, maybe we're used to a mid-afternoon, right? That time we start to get a little slumpy and we say, hey, I need something to pick me up. And so we grab something. And again, you're right. The body craves that quick energy and nothing does it faster than sugar. And say, hey, I'm going to not do that. But you can't just not do anything, right? Because then an hour after that, so you got to feed yourself.
To do something balanced. And we're really finding, actually, most of the sugar cravings I deal with, USDA's My Plate works so well. If I can get people to have even snacks that have either a fruit or a vegetable, a whole grain, and a little bit of protein, and especially I like to encourage nuts.
Right.
It takes care of it.
Yeah. Then that craving goes away.
And they're trying to bowl their way through the hunger because it's like you're not only supposed to eat 3 meals a day, right?
Yeah.
You can't eat in between, and if you're hungry, then you just got to gut it through. And that's not true. Our body needs fuel, and if you don't give it the fuel that it should have, then it's going to request. Well, it's just like a 2-year-old. If you don't guide their intake, they're going to eat sweets because that's what they want.
Yeah, I'll tell you the one thing that always interests me is almost this martyr idea that if I'm going to start eating healthy, I'm going to be miserable.
Yes. If you eat healthy, you don't care what your food tastes
like. It's not going to taste good. I'm going to be hungry all the time. and I just don't feel like that's true. I feel like when we really start to transform the way we eat, start to transform the way that our body metabolizes the food, I think at that point we can be just as full, we can have just as much enjoyment, but then also be giving the body the nutrients and the building blocks to build a new person. And I guess that's, whenever I start onto a nutrition idea or a lecture or anything, or anytime I'm talking with someone, I say, look, I mean, that old adage, right? You are what you eat. And I kind of love that commercial of the kids playing soccer, and one of them is a box of French fries and another one's a donut. I don't know if you've seen that one.
I haven't.
But really, I mean, what people maybe don't realize is how dynamic their bodies are, right? And how ever-changing, and how cells are constantly being made and killed off, and we just are turning over all the time. The best number that I've found is about every 10 years, almost every single cell, bone, muscle, has turned over in our body.
Well, and some of the fascinating new nutrition research is actually looking at the foods we eat and gene expression.
Sure.
So pregnant women, I mean, now what we eat literally may determine, and this is very new research and they're still working on it, but looks like it determines whether that child will have diabetes down the road or heart disease. It's makes me feel a little guilty because I had 4 children, and now do I have to take the blame for what happened to them? But fascinating. And even when people change into a healthy diet, we think it does change the gene expression
sure.
to some extent if we haven't done too much damage.
Right. So you have these, and I think you're probably talking about that epigenetic, research that's going into not just, hey, what genes do we have, but what genes are being expressed and what genes are being turned off. Even, and I think very fascinating and new form of science, I think, like you say, but yeah, I mean, you say, well, blame it on your mom. Now you can start blaming more stuff.
Really blame it on your mom.
No, I think you probably did fine. So again, we talk about these, anything you take in our bodies, right, it either gets turned into a cell, or which then gets turned into a system and a tissue and an organ, all that kind of stuff, or we just get rid of it, right? That used to be kind of the idea that, if it's a nutrient, then our body will take it and make what it needs to out of it, and if it's not, then it doesn't recognize it and it just passes and says, no harm, no foul.
Pees or poops it out.
Right?
Yep.
Which now we're finding out isn't the case.
Exactly.
And so I guess more important for me than just the over-sweetening, the over-sugaring of our foods is also just the bombardment of chemicals and preservatives and these things in our foods now that we don't recognize, right? It's always kind of a joke, like if you can't pronounce it, probably shouldn't be in the food. But anymore, we can't really pronounce anything that's in there. And I guess that would kind of be the next point of discussion that I might bring up is what do we do? How do we tell people to navigate all of these processed foods, all of these chemicals, what should be in there, what probably shouldn't be in there? The last 2 weeks, the articles that I've brought up have been common food additives that are in there, that have been in there for a long time, that we're now finding are very, very harmful. And so what's your, I mean, obviously eat whole foods, that's my, number one go-to, but sometimes we got to get something in a package. And so what do you tell people? How do you help people navigate what they should have?
Well, what I recommend is that they actually look at the ingredients and try, and what you said, if you can't pronounce it, don't buy it. Really, that's good sound advice, is if you don't recognize it, And we have a lot of suspicions about some of these additives. There's even a suspicion that maybe the increase in celiacs is because of the added gluten we put in breads, because we want them fluffy or we want them different. And so some really fascinating things. And maybe it's just because maybe my son's right. My taste buds are perverted. But I can, even with whole wheat bread, I find that if it has a lot of dough conditioners and preservatives, that it kind of makes me sick to my stomach.
Sure.
So I like Prairie Grain. That's only the grains and same thing with Great Harvest. You get those whole grain breads. They're just flour and
eggs
honey and salt and you know just the bare basic things. And yes, they spoil faster. You do have to put it in the freezer.
Right.
But as I tell my kids, just shows you even the bugs don't want it.
I say the same thing. You put a Twinkie out here on this, and if the bugs are passing by because they don't recognize it as food, then why are we eating it? The bacteria are smarter than we are.
Yeah, and I suspect that it has a lot to do with our overeating.
Sure.
Because again, they're foods that we don't recognize.
Yeah.
And we already know that excessive salt, saturated fat, and sugar turn off our ability to tell that we're full. And actually, a lot of times they drive our appetite.
Yeah.
And how often have you gone to a fast food restaurant and eaten something and you know it was a lot of calories and you come home and it's like,
why am I still hungry?
Yeah.
Why am I foraging now?
and that's exactly what it is. And food companies are not unaware of that.
Right. Well, I'm not one that loves to get too much into conspiracy theories, but I think for sure people need to realize that if a food company can make a food semi-addictive, right, they're doing themselves a pretty good favor, I think.
Like how does soda pop end up with caffeine? There's not a natural Pepsi bean that has caffeine in it.
The Pepsi bean. I think we should look in the Amazon for something like that. But for sure, you think of, I like the old Lay's potato chip commercials that talked about you can't eat just one. I mean, they were actually making it their job to make sure people couldn't eat just one.
Right. Fried and salted. Whereas if you gave somebody the same amount of baked potatoes, there's no way
they'd be so full.
They could eat it. They couldn't.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's always very fascinating to say, or to look at this and just think, there's all these other things in there, things that we can't pronounce, but I think people get this false sense of security that but it couldn't be in the food if it wasn't harmful for us. So tell me how these things are allowed to be in there, even when we're starting to find out that they're okay. I mean, how it's almost like we're fighting a battle with our own people. Our own. It's like, oh, well, we don't want you to eat that, even though it's available. How come it's available? I guess.
Well, the problem is when we first started finding out about vitamins and minerals and discovering them, it was like immediate deaths. White rice is a good example.
Yeah.
It's one of the ways we found out about thiamine. When they started refining white rice in the Orient, all of a sudden people started literally dying.
Right.
And so they know, okay, we've got to add some things back to this if we're going to do this so that people don't die. What we were looking for were immediate health repercussions, which now what we're starting to understand is these things sometimes don't show up till 30, 40, maybe even longer years away. And so they already became approved. And once something's approved or determined, generally recognized as safe, it's a lot harder to get it unapproved. You have to really show that, this is dangerous.
Right.
And then you have to convince people because they like their fluffy stuff and that they want things done a certain way.
Right.
And it's like when we, and I don't know if you remember that, you were probably too young. It was in the 70s when we first started really using partially hydrogenated oils.
Yeah.
It was because of tropical oils. We wanted to get rid of those. They had a long shelf life, very saturated, more than butter and lard.
Right.
And so we changed to partially hydrogenated, thought we were doing a world of good.
Yeah.
Well, then when we found out they were even worse than
anything else we've ever made.
As my favorite saying is, when we mess with the food, we usually mess it up.
Right.
Then they tried to go back to just oils. Shelf life wasn't long enough.
Yeah.
Because we put stuff on the shelf.
Right.
And so then they had to go back to a saturated fat. So guess where we are? We're back to the tropical oils.
To the coconut oil.
But they don't say it now.
Right.
They don't call them tropical oils because,
right.
What do they tell us? Oh, we lied. We were wrong.
Just kidding.
This still probably may not be so good for you, but we don't know what else to do.
But we don't want to make this anymore.
Yeah, so that's part of the problem. We
Yeah.
have these things. Shelf life is huge. We don't know what to do about it.
Yeah.
Have too many people who don't have the ability to freeze their food.
Right.
So if they buy bread and it molds within a couple of days and they're on low income, so there's this balancing of, okay, how big of a risk is this really?
Right. Well, and I guess at that point you kind of take it case by case and say, again, it's all about weighing the benefits. I always think it's semi-comical that, you talk about food pantries and things like that as we want long-lasting shelf life type of foods that are generally very chocked full of a lot of these different chemicals. But then you say, but they're eating something, at that point. So you can't get too mad and say, we're going to give them Kraft macaroni and cheese. But guess what? I mean, that's food that they can actually eat and they can not starve to death.
And it's cheap.
Exactly. So
at least it's a longer death down the road, or maybe we'll have the medicines that we can cure
maybe
them by
the
then.
time.
It's a real catch-22.
Yeah. Well, I would say I think definitely if now that kind of brings us to, you say that the cheapness, right? I think that's a real easy thing for people to say. Oh, it's just too expensive to eat healthy, right? I hear that all the time.
I do too.
It's so much easier. But I found, as my family's changed the way that we eat, I find that we actually spend less.
Mm-hmm.
And so tell me maybe the keys that you kind of have people, because again, right, we say, okay, well, I'm going to start eating healthy. So we go in and we throw away all our food. We do a purge. And then we go to the grocery store and say, okay, we can only stay on these aisles, or we can only buy this stuff. So all of a sudden, a $50 grocery trip becomes, $150 to $200. And then we think, well, heck, we just quadrupled what we usually spend in food. So tell me how you help people kind of get over that, because again, you and I realize that, well, then all of a sudden we're eating out less, and I think eating out blows anybody's food budget.
But they're not counting it in their food budget.
Right.
Because
they're thinking,
it's over here.
I only spend $50 a month in groceries. Oh, but I spend $300 a month
on eating out,
going out to eat.
Mm-hmm.
But what's the first step? How do you kind of help hand in hand say, okay, we're going to start to transition, and we're going to show you that it isn't more expensive and sometimes less?
Well, one of the first things I talk about is the satiation of whole grain foods or whole foods.
Yeah.
For instance, juice. Juice is a refined fruit.
Right.
We can drink a ton of juice. But if people really knew how many
oranges.
It took to do a 20-ounce. I mean, you're eating a ton then, but it's not satiating.
Right.
You have one orange, and that won't even. You'll probably be lucky to get 4 ounces of juice out of one orange.
Yeah, but you feel pretty full just because of all the bulk with it.
And it takes time to process this, and the body recognizes that type of food. So I really discuss that a lot, and the body being able to recognize the hunger and fullness cues.
Yeah.
And then just have them look at, okay, what are the things that you buy that are junk?
Yeah.
How much do they cost? And do you buy those the same time you're buying your weekly groceries, or is that something you do at a different time? Like how many people make a soda pop run, or have a special run where they buy all the soda pop?
Yeah.
Things that's just worthless money spent.
Right.
And also I talk a lot about the health repercussions. I mean, we have so much research now to show how protective healthy food is. You compare that with medications.
Sure.
There's especially now that insurance doesn't pay quite as well on medications.
Definitely.
People are starting to notice, oh yeah, this is expensive to have to buy this drug every month, when if 10 years ago I changed my diet when my doctor suggested it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have to take this medication.
Huh. Yeah, and I think, we talk about these things that we do to ourselves, right? And I think the CDC even gets behind and calls a lot of these diseases that we're dying from, right? Lifestyle type of diseases. Heart disease is one.
Type 2 diabetes.
Type 2 diabetes is a huge one, right? These are diseases that we kind of propagate by our own lifestyle choices. And I think food is one of these very top Right, we talk exercise, a lot of exercise, and I will say that exercise in this country has only increased since we started to, but obesity is still on the rise. And so I think, I had a nutrition friend that always said you can eat your way out of any exercise program.
Oh, yes, you can, especially if you think that you've worked off enough calories.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I just burned 300 calories. I can go and grab something that's, it can be very different. So let's talk calories, because I know this is definitely an issue. A lot of people, and I always talk about, I don't know who the sick mathematician was that decided they wanted to take on nutrition too, but I hate math that way. And it's almost like these people now, like you say, label reading has really just become a math game.
It has.
And just saying, oh, well, if I just stay within this X amount of calories,
doesn't matter what I eat.
You're right. Then I should either lose or gain weight, depending on. But I think now we're starting to realize that number is not always what we think it may be.
Oh, exactly. And it used to be that dietitians would tell people a calorie is a calorie.
Right.
But yeah, we know that it isn't. It is not. Nuts. Perfect example. One of the really, really great protein foods that probably people who listen to me as a patient get really tired of me saying, use nuts. But we are finding out that they're not metabolized the way we thought.
Right.
And so that fat content that everybody is so worried about.
Yeah, they're so high in fat.
It isn't used the same way in the body.
Right,
It is
right.
actually, the body's able to use it differently. And so the actual calories listed on that label are not accurate when it comes to eating in our body. We also think that's true about all whole foods.
Sure.
That you have the same amount of a refined calorie, it doesn't process the same way. And we do know that for a lot of refined foods, it actually requires more insulin to process them than it does for the same amount of, white bread and whole grains.
Yeah.
We know that it takes more insulin to process the same amount of white bread as it does the whole wheat.
Yeah, and see, isn't that interesting now? Because again, we have this huge generation of people that they're almost consumed with calorie counting.
Yes, and who uses the same calories every day? And even we have very intricate formulas that we use in the hospital to try and figure out how much patients need to eat. We're never right.
Right.
It's all we consider that is a baseline, somewhere to start.
Yeah.
And then we watch what they're doing and move it up or down, depending on their need. And so it's just impossible to predict how many calories someone needs during the day.
Right, and say, if you just keep it under this amount. Let's talk fad diets for a little while, because it's a thing that I'm very unimpressed with, and I think a way that really people... again, we measure health by how much gravity weighs on us, right? Some number on a scale that's semi-arbitrary, and so we think, well, I want to be healthier, so I need to lose weight, right? That's almost this equation, which usually is true, but I think it's different. I want to be healthier, and so I'm going to change some lifestyle things, and then weight comes off as almost this, secondary benefit to a healthier lifestyle. But really, most people kind of skip that middleman and say, I need to be healthier, so I need to lose weight, so in come all of these. And I mean, it's been a long time probably coming that these fad diets have been around, and most of them last for X amount of years, and then they're gone.
And then come back again.
And then all of a sudden, for some reason, here they are again. And I think for me, one of the biggest challenges in dealing with people on fad diets, they love these fad diets because they see that weight just come off so quickly. But I guess for me, and hopefully this is in line with what you talk to your people about, is the faster it comes off, that I've seen, the faster it comes off, the shorter it stays off.
Yeah, very much so. And to convince people that the slow, sure way where you're actually changing your lifestyle habits is so much more effective long term.
Well, and I think what we need to help people realize is that metabolism itself is not an easily changing, right? Our body gets very used to the way that it processes what we eat. And so if we just starve it for a period of time, it's going to kind of freak out. Maybe it'll use some fuels in the fat cells it hasn't used in a little while. And maybe that water weight comes down, right? That's another big thing is people dehydrate themselves. And so we see all this weight come off and get really, really happy, but then we go back to how we ate before. Metabolism hasn't changed, and so not only that, sometimes we overindulge, right, at the end of a diet.
Well, and we think the body is, again, because it was starved and it knows it.
Yeah.
It produces hormones
Right.
that cause us to overeat and to eat foods that will store better because who knows when the next starvation period may come.
Next swimsuit season, usually.
Yeah.
And so I guess the long-term ideas and the long-term goals. Tell me what you usually tell people as far as a healthy weight loss regimen. What should we be looking for maybe per week or per month? I don't know. Is there a recommendation, or is that very person-to-person specific also?
Well, there's a lot of variation, but typically to give a guideline, because people want one, it's a half a pound to a pound a week.
Sure.
And that may not be a steady half pound every week or a pound every week. It may be 4 pounds a month.
Yeah.
Or because sometimes people will do that. It just really depends on that individual. But that's what type of weight loss we're talking about. And if people don't see 10 pounds in a week, they get really concerned. It's like, even if they've lost 2 pounds in 2 weeks, they're like, well, I haven't lost any.
Right.
Yeah, you have. You lost 2 pounds. And then I usually explain to them how many calories are in a pound, and they have to how much they'd have to undereat or overeat to actually lose that much weight. And again, it's not an entirely accurate scenario, but it gives them at least an idea that this is not 10 pounds in a week is not realistic.
Yeah. And not only that, we can't expect, it's at that point, I don't know why we wouldn't expect our body to be throwing out red flags and saying, Mayday, right? We're used to this and we're not getting this. And again, we're trying to sustain our own body's functions, and now all of a sudden we're robbing it of things that it used to have, and so it should freak out at that point. 10 pounds in a week but some of these diets, that's what they're touting. It's like, in the first 20 days you can lose 20 pounds. It's somewhat crazy. So tell me how we help people realize that these fad diets are not in their best interest. They're going to be around forever because there's so much money to be made in them. And the ones that I've seen be successful are the only ones that you just have to continue to be on all the time. So you're always buying their food. Again, they're making customers. Mm-hmm. The fact that some are out there that are multi-level marketing companies, that should tell people enough, right? Because if it was something you could do and then get off of, then where would be the perpetual every month buying, as these multi-level companies thrive on? So where do we get people, I guess maybe what should we be looking for when we start to make these healthy changes? Because the scale's not going to give us that immediate, gratification. What else can we look for, and what should people be paying attention to, I guess, more than just, like I say, that just arbitrary number that tells you how much gravity pulls down on you?
Oh, exactly. Measurements. Measurements are really important to do at the beginning. How they feel. Yeah. And it's really hard for people to do that on their own without coaching.
Sure.
They need to have people around them who are supportive, and because otherwise they're still looking at the scale. But those are the things I focus on. Health. In my position, I do a lot with diabetes education.
Sure.
And that's something you've got numbers. So they can see, when I eat this way, the numbers
then my sugar is specific. Yeah.
Yes, and if I didn't want to eat whole wheat bread, then wow, look what my sugar did.
Right.
That's a field where we can see a little bit more of it. But that's also an issue, is that for general health, if it's not coming off fast, if the person is really anxious about their weight, they have difficulty looking at any other measurements.
Yeah.
Because they're just not as obvious, and because they feel so anxious about things and they want to lose more weight, they're not able to feel how much better they're feeling too.
Well, and I'll tell you that one thing I tell a lot of people coming to my office, right? If you've dealt with something for years and years and years and years, to expect it to change in weeks is a silly idea. And I think some people need to see how long it's taken them to get to the point that they're at, and say, hey, let's just be patient, because a few little changes, a few small differences, right? You made a few changes 30 years ago, 20 years ago, or whatever, that got you to where you are now. If you make a few healthier changes right now, then, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, it will make a big difference.
Well, and the great thing is that we know from research that you don't have to lose all the weight in order to get all the health benefits.
Right, sure.
We lose even 10%.
Yeah.
There's a huge health benefit. So that's something else I recommend. And of course, just by the nature of my job, usually people who come to me for help have already rejected the diet, the fad diet route, because they know what I'm going to say. So I will usually have them come and say, I've done lots of fad diets, and I just want to eat healthy. I just want to be healthier. Right. And that's probably the biggest focus.
One contention with a lot of these diets that I've come in contact with is that, let's give you a springboard, and let's maybe lose some weight for a little while, and then we'll transition you off of our program and get you back into. And I guess my issue with that is, why can't we just start educating at the beginning? Why does this have to be an eventual process? But you'll feel so good when you lose the weight that now you'll be more motivated to change. I don't see that ever happening. I see not people getting more motivated.
It doesn't. They lose the weight, and because they're so hungry and they feel so deprived, they go right back where they were. But that's one thing over the years that has really become apparent, is if you're going to keep the weight off, you've got to keep doing the same thing you did to lose it. Yeah,
and if that's starving yourself and eating weird foods, and then be prepared to do that forever. Because if you're wanting to get out of that cycle, if you're wanting to get off the diet, right? Again, that's one of the problems with the diets, is there's a point where you get off.
Exactly.
If you haven't changed anything, and to think, after I lose a bunch of weight, I will change inherently, is just a crazy idea. And hopefully people maybe that are contemplating that, or even on something like that, can see the strangeness in that idea, that, when I get off this diet and I start to move into that, all of a sudden I'm going to change how it's just, if I couldn't do it before, why do I think I can do it now?
Exactly.
And so anyway, I can imagine that you've seen a few of those people come in that have done all those diets. And that's my own story. We tried South Beach. We tried, all these ones that you don't hear about really anymore, that will probably resurface in another
they will.
5 to 10,
another name.
5 to 10 years. But really the only thing that ever just kept it off was saying, hey, you know what, I'm just going to start to do better. I'm going to start to eat more whole foods. In fact, really what it was an adding of good. I finally just said, you know what, I'm done trying to take stuff out. I like donuts. I like pizza, all that kind of stuff. It tastes good to me, and so depriving myself of it was such an issue that it was always waiting till, when can I splurge, right? Well, when can I have this food that I love?
That's exactly right.
But instead I said, okay, I'm going to keep eating all this junk. I didn't call it junk back then. I called it food. I'm going to keep eating this because I love it, but I'm just going to add good into it. And I heard a talk, and the guy said fresh fiber first, and he said, if you can start every meal with some sort of fresh, raw fruit or vegetable, whatever you like, just start the meal with that. Before you eat the pizza, before you eat the donut, whatever it is, have something fresh, have something good, and your body will start to reward you. And I'll tell you, the thing that he didn't tell me in that talk was, you start to realize the difference when you eat that, and then you turn around and eat the junk. And you're like, wait, I can feel this difference.
You can. Yeah, you bet you can.
And so I talk about donuts. That was probably my favorite food. I mean, I lived by Krispy Kreme when I was going to college, and I think I helped keep them in business, right, almost single-handedly. And I haven't had a Krispy Kreme donut in I don't know how long, and it's not because I don't think it tastes good. Right, but it's not a willpower thing issue either. It's not that, I just stay away from it. It's just that I know what that type of eating leads to, and the feelings that it makes, and how I sleep, and all that kind of stuff, my mood, that it's just not even, it's not a temptation.
Well, you've chosen health. Yeah. And that's the key. We have to choose what we really want.
And there's no magic wand.
No. In
There's
fact,
no magic pill.
That's a warning flag right there. If it looks like it's easy, it's a lie.
If everybody's saying, look how easy it was.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, a lot of just more soapbox issues, I guess, today. I think for our last few minutes, Betty, I'd probably just ask you to kind of, someone that comes in, they're looking to change. What are maybe the most basic things that you start to help them with? What's the easiest way to get started? Maybe someone listening that says, I've really always wanted to eat healthy. I've always struggled doing it. I don't know if you just have like here's what I would recommend everyone just start to try to do to get down that pathway.
Oh, absolutely. It's just every time you eat, think fruit or vegetable, or fruit and vegetable.
Yeah.
Whole grain, and proteins, especially nuts and beans.
Yeah.
That is really kind of the focus right there. Are those three things. Just eat balanced, think healthy, do what hopefully your mom's told you to do when you were little. Include all of those things.
Right.
And that will make a world of difference. And eat when you're hungry.
Yeah.
And quit when you're not hungry.
I know, isn't that funny? We're really the only species that eats for other reasons than just basic nutrition. I always ask my classes, like, how many of you have just eaten a meal, and then you get a phone call from a friend, they say, hey, we're all going to eat. You're like, all right, well, I'm coming. I'm not full. I'm not hungry. I just ate. I'm full, but I'm going to go, and I'm probably going to order something. And
why don't we just get some water?
Yeah, exactly. And sit with people and talk and say, well, I already ate. I'm okay.
Do the social thing, but don't make yourself sick.
Yeah.
Because that's what we're doing.
It's been a great chat. We're a couple of minutes away. You mentioned water. I think that's one thing I want to throw out there too. Again, we love to drink our calories. It's something that our culture is very interested in. How do we get more water in people? I know most of us are walking around dehydrated. I love, again, commercials, right? Sprite's big tagline is obey your thirst. But what people don't realize is when you drink Sprite, you dehydrate yourself further.
Well, what I tell people, and seems to be most useful, I have this wonderful handout that shows what color your urine should be.
Oh, okay.
And so I give that to them. So I just say, if your pee's not that color, you got to drink more.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. That has been more effective than anything else, because otherwise you have to take temperature into effect. You have to take, are they eating fruits and vegetables anyway? Because you need less water if you are.
Right.
But color of the urine.
That's the way.
That's the one that does it.
All right. Well, maybe I should start
pale
handing
yellow.
that out. Pale yellow.
Pale yellow.
Pale yellow. Maybe
it's not pale yellow. Drink some more.
Maybe I won't tell you to go on and Google it. Maybe go over to Betty's office.
Yes.
and
Come
get
by.
a picture.
I actually have handouts.
Awesome.
I'll even leave them on my front desk there so people can just pick them up.
Let's do that at the end. So tell me, do you specifically just work with cases in the hospital? Do people come and consult with you? Can they just come in and say, hey, I want to chat with the nutritionist? Tell me how it works to get in to get your expertise.
It works that way. I mean, they can just call a hospital to ask. And I'm really excited because the hospital has given me a new role since the 1st of December, and that is to even be more involved in the community. So if people want me to come to a group that they have to talk about nutrition, about anything they want about nutrition, I'm available for that.
Yeah.
So really just contact the hospital. We can do any type of format. We have a pre-diabetes class once a month that's available for free. And that's a nice thing. All of these things are for free.
That's one that you already do?
Yes.
Tell me where you do that and when and all that.
We do it at the hospital. It is the third Wednesday of the month at 6 o'clock.
And just there at the hospital, pre-diabetes class.
Yeah, just come into the front desk and they'll tell you where to go from there.
How are we going to reverse the diabetes epidemic?
Oh, we've got to change our eating and get off the couch.
Get off the couch. Hopefully everyone that's listening to this radio show right now, they're like on a treadmill or something probably.
Oh, I'm sure they are.
Well, we always sign off too, and we say, this is a great day to be healthy. It's a great day to start changing things, and I think we've learned a few things for sure. If nothing else, a mindset shift that we can have and say, okay, we can do it.
And just start with one thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a total overhaul. Change your grains to whole grains, or just make sure you have a fruit and vegetable with every meal. Just little things.
Something little you can do forever.
Be huge. The benefits just keep getting better and better.
Right. Well, anything else that's burning that you just want to say to everybody that's listening?
Oh, I can't think of anything right now.
Well, we again just really appreciate having you on. Very in line with what we've talked about on the show anyway. So it's always good to just reinforce. Again, if someone's been listening every week, they're probably like, "Wow, they kind of say the same thing over and over." But obviously, we need to keep hearing it. I say until the trend has turned around.
Exactly.
Until our kids are projected to have a longer lifespan than a shorter one, right? I think these are things that we need to learn, things that we need to start talking about and continue to talk about. So today's a great day. Like I say, the sun's going to be out, even though it is wintertime. The sun is out. We should start getting healthier. We should get out and do what we can do. And if you do it for no other reason, not just because I say it or because Betty says it, just do it for the health of it. Thank you for listening.